Hey, Islanders, and welcome to episode 27 of the Camano Voice. On this episode, I speak to the past and new owner of the Movement Arts Studio. Please welcome Kara Keating and Carol Mason. Hi, I'm Brandon Erickson, and you're listening to the Camano Voice podcast, where I interview folks around Camano Island and beyond. If you want to stay up to date on events, businesses, and even hear a little history of this area, subscribe to this podcast and share with your friends. Thanks for listening. Hey, Islanders, and welcome to another episode of the Camano Voice, where we release a new episode every Tuesday. On this episode, I got to speak to Kara Keating and Carol Mason. Now, Kara Keating started Movement Arts Studio. She started it 21 years ago. And she's been on Camano for quite a while as well. So we get to hear about how she got started with it, what yoga has meant to her, and how she got involved in it, or how she started her practice in yoga in the first place. And then how she's continued to grow the studio until today. And then we also get to start hearing about the transition as Kara Keating is actually leaving Movement Arts Studio and transitioning it to Carol Mason, who will be the new owner of Movement Arts Studio. So it was a great episode. I'm so glad I got to have both of them on the episode at the same time. Got to hear both perspectives, both where it came from and how it got started, and then what do we see as the future of it. Just had a great time with them. So we wish Kara well on her new adventures, but without further ado, here's my conversation with Kara Keating and Carol Mason. Hey, Islanders, and welcome to another episode of the Camano Voice. Today I'm here with Kara and Carol from Movement Arts Studio. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Brandon.
So before we get started, Kara, tell us a little bit about yourself.
The reason I'm here today is that I'm the current owner of Movement Arts Yoga Studio on Camano Island, and I've been on Camano Island for 7 years, 5 years with our studio, and we have we love being here. This is our favorite location. We've been in 3 locations over 21 years, and this is the one we're staying in. However, I'm not staying, and Carol is, so I have a little thing I can just go for here and let you know what's going on. So on January 1st, 2020, I'll be handing over the reins of Movement Arts Yoga Studio to a new owner. Her name is Carol Mason. She's been our top yoga teacher since we moved our studio from Stanwood to Camano 5 years ago. And for me, it's been 21 years of nurturing the studio and all its people. When you walk into Movement Arts to take a class, the feeling of warmth, of friendship, and really love is palpable. Even when the studio's empty, you can feel it. It's weird. It's all the people practicing in there. I'm choosing now to pass on the legacy of this work, and Carol stands poised and ready to take on full operation of the studio, as well as keeping up with her own teaching and education. So I'm both proud of her and thankful because she's the ideal person to keep the yoga fires burning here on Camano Island. Movement Arts is a fully equipped studio, which means you can show up with just your mat and everything else is provided for you. Some people are surprised by how many props we use in yoga: blankets, blocks, straps, bolsters, and more. The average class size is 12 students, which means that you are known and attended to. We like to know your name and know who you are. Located upstairs at Camano Commons, this convenient location is great for anyone who's going off or on the island. You just can't miss it. There's plenty of parking and many other businesses to explore after class. So it's with great pleasure that I celebrate every individual that I've met here. And really, there is no place like this idiosyncratic island. I predict a bright future for Carol, Movement Arts, and the community that will surround her with support and love. So there you go.
Awesome. Thank you. And with that type of introduction, tell us a little bit about Carol.
Yeah, no pressure.
Well, maybe I should talk about Carol a little bit first. I would tell you that Carol She came to us with the fever to become a teacher. And when she'll tell you more about herself, but when she was in the teacher training class to become a yoga teacher, every question that was asked, her hand was up to answer. And you could tell when she was trying not to put her hand up, but she couldn't help herself. And she knew all the answers because of her dedication to the art and science of yoga. And so this is a natural transition for us. I'm going on to other things, and to keep movement arts alive and thriving is my dream. When I started the business, I was like, someday.
Yeah. No, that's excellent.
Well, and that's kind of my feeling about the studio is that it becomes your home as a yoga student, and then you just become part of this community. And when Kara first approached me with the possibility of buying the business, and I'm thankful that we had this long window to really process it, because it has been her baby. And I totally appreciate what it means to launch your child. And so to be in the position to be that person is truly an honor and a responsibility, because I feel I want to maintain and hold that vibration that is in the studio, of this close-knit community of these people that not only do they go to practice yoga, but they form friendships and they form support for each other. And you see it and how it unfolds, even when a new student comes in, how quickly they're brought into the fold, and it's really heartwarming. So it becomes, yoga. It's not just the physical practice of stretching and it is a whole body experience. And I look forward to, the creative potential and just, pursuing my own dharma, that's your purpose in life. It's like it felt mutually like it was the right time for both of us. Mm-hmm. So I'm really thankful.
Yeah. So let's take it back a little bit farther. Kara, how did you get started? Like, tell us about your journey then.
What, from, at what age do you want me to start?
Yeah, I honestly, I want to go back to the beginning. So, getting out of high school, did you go to college, or what's your educational, or what's your background?
I grew up in New York City in a large family, and one interesting thing is that when I was about 12 years old, my father, who was a CBS executive, he got fired, and he went down to an ashram in North Carolina, and he came back a changed man. He was gone for about a month, and he came back like, okay, I'm a yogi now. And anyway, he saw that I was suffering in my own ways, had some difficulties, medical difficulties, and he said, I have to teach you some of this yoga. So I actually got started with yoga with my dad.
Wow, okay.
He taught me my first few yoga poses, and it helped. It helped me deal with my life, and it was always that way, a string through my life. I even took yoga in high school because I went to New York's first public alternative high school, and yoga was in the curriculum.
Okay.
But I was also a dancer, and so when I went to college, I ended up getting a dance degree. It just was my love through college.
What type of dancing?
Well, I'm classically trained, so ballet and modern dance and jazz dance, yeah. And so had some time in my early working years after I graduated college where I taught dance and taught, actually I was one of the aerobics in the early days of the aerobics, Jackie Sorensen style Jane Fonda workout. Mm-hmm. I was teaching those things back in the 80s. So anyway, and then I had a 10-year career with the phone company selling advertising, and that was lucrative, but couldn't really hold me.
Yeah, I can't imagine you doing that type of work.
Actually, it taught me a lot about sales.
Yeah.
Oh, I learned a lot about sales.
I've heard that.
And it was actually, it was a good job. I was all over Washington State and Seattle and traveling, and it was fun. Well, it lasted, but I had a couple kids and a husband who wanted to move to the country. So somehow we ended up in Arlington and bought a old dairy farm from the original owner, and fixed up the barn and made it into a yoga studio / martial arts. He was a martial artist.
Okay.
So anyway, that's how Movement Arts got started in 1998. And,
wow.
Lots of challenges, personal challenges along the way, health challenges, several divorce, and loss of a partner, and, you name it. But yoga's been the string for me that has gotten me through all this and enabled me to keep the studio going through a lot of different trials and tribulations, and keep it thriving, and then attracting the kind of teachers that we have that have helped do that, and the kind of people that we attract, just beautiful, wonderful people. So feeling the support, like what Carol was talking about, is this community. Mm-hmm. It's a yoga community. It's called a kula, which is like your community of choice, the people you choose to hang around.
Yeah.
So, anyway, so somehow I got to Camano Island because I was called one day by the Camano Center. They were looking for a yoga teacher.
Okay.
So I started out here teaching a couple times a week at the Camano Center. That's where I met Carol, actually.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
We had huge classes out there, like 40, 50 people in this room. It was just insane. And so anyway, we eventually got our own place here. And that's kind of very quick story.
Yeah.
Story of my life.
So when you were starting in 1998 in the barn, what was how did you get started? I guess you had some sales background from your other experiences.
Yeah.
But how did you get that started then?
Oh, well, in Arlington in 1998, a yoga studio was unheard of, and there was a lot of, there were some people who were happy about it, and there were actually others who were not. It was considered and still is at times, people have ideas that it's religious or something like that, which it's not. But, so it was tough. Yeah. It was tough. Actually, there's an old article in 2002 issue of Real Simple magazine. I'm trying to remember I think it's a fall issue, like October, November, and they did an article on us, on me actually, and then they came out and spent a couple days with us taking pictures. Did you ever see that?
I saw it.
Yeah, it was pretty cool, and it was mostly related to a particular health crisis that I was going through at the time, which the article is really interesting because there were people, I have a rare condition, and it was, I had a lot of calls after that article came out from people all over the place saying, oh, wow, that sounds like what I have. Of course, everyone's always self-diagnosing in this world. But yeah, so there's an article in there somewhere.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah, so...
So when did you move from the barn to a new place then?
I was there at the barn for 11 years.
Oh,
and we had a lot of community support by that time. Our classes were being advertised through the Parks and Rec department. We had a big dance program. We had kids. It was a big operation. We've scaled down quite a bit for our current space. But let's see, what was I going to say about that? What was the question again? Sorry.
Oh, just
in these memories.
When you moved.
It's like you just trip out. When we moved. Moved from the barn. That was basically due to a divorce situation, and so I had to find a new place. And that's where we ended up in the church.
In Stanwood.
We have
Which church?
It's 271st Street.
It's the one behind Bank of America.
Yeah, it's
behind,
Food Bank.
Behind that one.
Yep. We were there for 5 years.
At least 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah, 5 years. Yeah. Yeah, and that was a beautiful space, and we had a big retail area and lots of waiting area. We don't have a waiting area in our current space.
Yeah.
That's why we have a strict policy. You have to show up early or on time for class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys were in Stanwood from 2009, and then you moved from 2009, right? and then moved from there. Is that when you came out here then?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
yeah, our lease was up in the other space. It was expensive and drafty.
And and
Quite
the
drafty.
floor was freezing. Yeah.
Yeah. So was the barn for that matter. I mean, our current space here at Camano Commons, I have to say, is quite comfortable compared to anything we've ever had. You know, usually we've been in these drafty, cold places. So, yeah.
It helps
so,
your concentration, right? If you're freezing, you've got to really concentrate.
So I called. I remember realizing I needed to find a place. I was like, well, I don't want to leave the island, you know, so I'm going to find some space on the island, when I quickly found out there was very little commercial space on Camano Island.
Yeah.
So I met with Bill Duncan. He showed me that space. That's the first space I saw.
Okay.
I was like, I think this is it.
Yeah.
I think this is it. It just felt right. I like being upstairs. I like the view. We could see everything happening down below. Yeah. So that's how it all began here.
Well, it felt like the potential for a greater community. It felt like, because if you didn't know where the location was in Stanwood, people would just go down 532 and you just keep driving through.
Mm-hmm.
But this location, our visibility has been so wonderful.
Yeah.
I think it's brought more people to the studio.
Yeah. Well, the parking is nice. It's relatively safe here, you know. I like that aspect because, you know, coming and going. It's just, it's a little community in itself.
Yeah.
And we like that we can go downstairs, have something to eat, or get some coffee, or meet with friends. It's really nice in the summer.
Yeah. So Kara, how did you end up, like, how did you hear about Camano and end up here? Was that just from the
Yeah,
Camano
well,
Center?
my daughter had a boyfriend out here, and she kept telling me, Mom, because I was in Arlington. I never left, you know, I was so busy. And you got to see Camano Island. You would really like it. So, yeah, I still hadn't come out here, but then then I got the call, and I took the job, and that's how I started coming out here.
Okay.
That's how it all began. So
Yeah.
I guess I have the Camano Center to thank for that, making that connection. And then eventually I moved here. So yeah, I sold my house. My daughter moved out, went to college, and so I was there in Arlington in a house, you know, big house, 3-bedroom house on the golf course by the high school. I was like,
Time to go.
time to go. So I came out here, rented a place with a view, an amazing view, and eagles and herons, and walked to the beach. And eventually it became my house. I eventually bought it and just sold it, actually. Well, I'm not supposed to talk about that stuff. Anyway, happily sold it. It was a beautiful place, and yeah.
Yeah. Well, very cool.
Yeah.
So, Carol, tell us a little bit about you. What's kind of your background? What were you doing, you know, out of high school? Did you go to college?
I out of high school, I went to Europe. I was an au pair for a family in Germany for a year.
Oh, very cool.
I was very into foreign language in high school, and obsessed with travel to Europe, and went over there for a year and did a ton of travel and became fluent, and and then from that came home and worked it was actually the Edmonds Community College travel office. I went through their travel and tourism program.
Okay.
And, yeah, and from there got hooked up with a job at a place called Romantic Travel and Tours.
Okay.
Romantic spelled with a K at the end. Because it's romantique. There was a group of hotels in Germany that are these owner-operated historic inns with fabulous restaurants and really traditional looking. And
Okay.
and so there was a group of hotels that this business represented. And so they had an 800 number, and people would call, make reservations, and that's where I met my husband
All right.
and my best friend. And
Yeah.
and so from there, we started our own business eventually, and started our own family, and was cruising right along with the travel industry for a number of years. And when my girls were still pretty young, I want to say 3 and 5 or 3 and 4 thereabouts, a girlfriend and I decided we were living in South Everett. We started taking yoga classes at the Mukilteo YMCA,
Okay.
I had been reading about yoga in books in terms of, because I was already on kind of a spiritual path, and a number of the authors that I really enjoyed talked about their own yoga practice and how they used yoga to deepen their own meditation, and so that appealed to me. I thought, I've got to try, when I saw the selection of classes available, I thought, well, let's try yoga. And I loved it. But I was immediately distracted by the physicality of it. And I was an athlete in school, so it appealed to me to challenge myself in that way and get back into some more athletic type practices. And so I went through, the initial, although being interested initially through the spiritual side of it. At the gym, you don't typically find the spiritual connection with yoga. It's treated very much like an exercise class.
Yeah.
And so, but that's what was available, in my area, and that's what I, stayed with. When we moved up to Camano, I continued to practice at the gyms up here.
Okay.
Until they would close. And then they would close again. And I had met one of Kara's teachers at one of the gym classes.
Okay.
And so I knew about movement arts, but I hadn't made it out to Arlington to really check out the studio. But when she told me that they were actually starting to teach classes on the island, I had showed up at the gym one morning and the sign was on the window, "We're closed." And I immediately drove and didn't look back.
Yeah.
It's like once I found Kara's teaching and that approach of movement arts and the focus of the whole aspect of yoga, it reminded me why I approached yoga to begin with, and I haven't looked back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then you started going to that class at the Camano Center then?
I did.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, I was a student before I was a teacher, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. How did you and your husband end up on the Camano Island?
Well, we were living in South Everett, and we had a lovely home, but it was an area of Everett that every neighbor was doing something different with their kids in school. Some kids were in a public school, some kids were private school, some kids were privately homeschooled, Christian schools. I couldn't find any consensus, and I finally went and visited the elementary school, and they told me they had a 30% turnover every year of students because there were so many apartment buildings in the area.
Okay.
And so that didn't appeal to me. Someone tried to break into the house, and that didn't appeal to me. So we started looking for property, and we looked all over. We looked in Snohomish, we looked in Edmonds, we looked, but our real estate agent actually had good friends that were trying to sell a lot up here on Camano.
Okay.
And we said, let's take a look. And yeah, again, we didn't look back. It's like once we found it, it's been the right fit for us. And to find this community here, it's just, I feel like you're living the dream every day.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is something, Camano Island just has such a special atmosphere that it has about it.
Well, it's like my girls went to school with the kids of their teachers. It's like the teachers were part of the community.
Yeah.
And it's, the teachers were living within the school district.
Yeah.
You don't find that so much when you get into the, bigger populated areas. And you really just felt connected right away. And I know I was fortunate to move up here when my girls were at that age that they were, going into school, because I could then immediately meet people, because I didn't know anybody up here.
Yeah.
And was moving from friends and family, in the Bothell area, and Seattle area. And so, it really meant a lot to be able to meet people right away.
Yeah. No, that's that's always a hard part moving to a new community is trying to find connecting with people.
And I've pointed that out to students that people that retire, that come into the studio and they're
Yeah.
taking some classes, but they don't know anybody. It's like, well, this is the place to come.
Yeah.
Because you're immediately embraced by, join us for coffee after class. And so it just, it's a great way to meet people when you've moved to a new area.
Right.
Yeah.
Very cool. So, now so you're working on the transition. You guys are, you mostly worked through it, but when did this start coming about for you, Kara? When did you start kind of leaning this direction that you wanted to sell movement arts rather than move it around or move it?
Oh, I didn't ever want to move it again.
Okay.
Even though it's in the name, it's like enough movement, enough moving anyway.
Yeah.
Do you remember? I think it might be a couple of years. I think it was a very casual question I gave to Carol a year and a half ago or 2 years ago. Like, would you ever be interested if this came up? And she thought about it for a long while. I think I had to ask her again a year later. And then maybe the third time I brought it up, that's how I'm kind of remembering it, there was more interest. And it kind of happened at the perfect time because in the last 2 years, I think it's just been 2 years, maybe 3 years, I helped start the day spa next door to...
Yeah.
I got that started and with a partner and then sold my interest there. And then I went down to California for a 28-day training in shamanic energy medicine with Alberto Villotto, who is an amazing teacher. And so what I was learning there, besides my own personal development, was these old ancient healing techniques that have been carried on through many, many years, and sort of mixed in with what we know about modern science in terms of like how to power up the brain and nutrition and all kinds of great things.
Yeah.
So I'm becoming more and more interested in this work, which is mostly individual work, one-on-one with people.
Okay.
And I know it's not in the mainstream, but that's kind of why I'm leaving and going to, you were just talking about coming into a new community. Like, I'm not leaving Camano because I'm not happy here. It's a beautiful place and I have great friends and the studio is great, but because I'm feel more like I'm being called or being pulled in the direction of a place in the desert. So I'm headed towards Tucson and working with people in this, the healing work, doing the healing work. So that, I think, has motivated me to make this shift.
Yeah.
That's a big change for me. Yeah.
So when you first started going to the healing teaching then, do they have a community down in Arizona or?
Well, they train, these are, we're basically what we are. The people who do this training are modern day shamans. So, shamanism predates yoga, it predates almost all religions. It's, so old. And the fact that a lot of it has survived through thousands and thousands of years is super cool. So with Alberto, their base is actually in Chile, and they do all kinds of things, but the training that we did was just, in California. And then there's people who've trained all over the world and all over the country. But it's hard to meet. It's rare to meet another person who's done this. It's called the Four Winds Society. And so, but occasionally I do run into somebody. I was in Mount Shasta recently, and I found a person who had done the same training, did a session with her. So there aren't a lot of people doing this work.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of ready for that, like the cat who has 9 lives. It's, I figure good to have a chance to recreate myself at least one more time, I'm in getting into that retirement age and so on. So, to make that shift into just a different place. And I still plan on maybe doing retreats, like yoga retreats or whatever, occasional things, but I don't know how much regular teaching I'll be. I'm not going to own a studio. One of the things that Carol's taking on is the administrative side of things. And, well,
Yeah,
she knows.
it's a new hat.
I said she had to go from 1 massage a month to 2. Yeah, so letting go of that part, less time on the computer. Those are some things I'm looking forward to. Although I do plan to write, so I do have a plan to write. You may see my bestseller out there someday. I guess
Very
all
cool.
writers fantasize about that. But
Oh, very cool.
yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
All right. And then what about you, Carol? How do you feel like when this transition, walk us through that, like you started having the conversation about taking over. Where did it go from there?
Yeah, well, I was definitely intrigued when Kara brought it up the first time, but I was glad to have the time to really process what it would mean and the responsibility that it is to take it on, because it does mean so much to so many people in the community. And but I want to continue practicing with my friends, basically.
Yeah.
So I feel fortunate to be in the position to do it. And but yeah, like I say, I hope to cultivate an environment that allows both students and teachers to continue to pursue and explore what really intrigues them about the practice. And we'll have some interesting workshops coming up. One of our teachers just did a training with an internationally known yoga teacher on the subtle body.
Okay.
And yeah, so Melissa's going to do a workshop in the end of January, January 25th, on what she learned from that. And it's it's just taking your practice deeper. Yes, you can go to a yoga class and get the stretching out of it, but there's other stuff at play that's going on, whether you're conscious of it or not. But the more conscious of it you become, the deeper your practice becomes. And we've got a guest teacher coming in who's going to do some like a journaling practice with some restorative yoga.
Okay.
And so you
like journaling, writing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Just making sure I was
wasn't
missing something.
And we're going to combine that with an evening sound bath, which is the crystal bowls, and just so it should be a really wonderful afternoon, early evening of just really exploring the different aspects of yoga.
Yeah.
But and that's just in the short term, and we'll just, like I say, I'm just I'm open, and I'm excited to kind of ignite some of that creativity to look at things to bring into the studio and share with everybody. So I'm going to be going back for an additional 300-hour training myself once we complete our current teacher training schedule.
Okay.
At the end of April. I'm going to go do a 300-hour training. Yeah. So, yeah, and just hope to work with some teachers that I've followed for a time, and just other aspects of yoga, just to kind of deepen my own practice and understanding, and then bring it into the studio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how often do you guys, how often on a regular basis were you guys going to different retreats or trainings or?
We joke that yoga teachers spend their income that they earn from teaching yoga on trainings. We pretty much do that,
Okay.
I mean, for the most part, teachers, it's interesting. We have, when you look at the professions of our students, we have more teachers than any other profession. And I think part of that is the teachers want to learn.
Right.
And yoga is something you can learn. It's not just something obviously you do it. You have to do it to learn it, but you learn. It's continually deeper. As you get deeper into the study, it goes on and on and on. So yeah, it's super powerful. So I was also going to mention that retreats, we have a history of doing yoga retreats several a year, and we go to Leavenworth. We've gone to Costa Rica. We've gone to Maui a couple times. Now Carol has a travel background and some. Anyway, she's got a few retreats up her sleeve, and we may be doing something together in the future too, down in Southwestern America. So yoga retreats are great, and anybody can go. And even if you don't practice yoga, you can go.
Yeah.
You know, people ask, can I bring my husband along? Not that guys don't do yoga, but we have a lot more women than men.
Yeah.
You know, and yes, the husbands can come and have a great time too. So people should definitely get into the mailing list and then find out what's going on. Because what's cool about a yoga retreat, especially if you're traveling alone, it's really nice because you get to go with a group of people that you know are cool, that are health conscious, that are going to, you know, practice together and be friendly, you know, for the most part.
Yeah. Not too much
an
drama.
Easy travel situation.
Yeah.
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 That's very cool. Yeah, and it's always nice to be able to go with a group that you already know, and you're like-minded. You know, you guys are going to want to go similar places and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. So, so people should stay tuned because there's, I'm sure, some exciting things coming down the line. And our teacher training, by the way, I don't want to be bragging about this program, but I have to say that our program has been honed over the years. We've been doing, there's teacher trainings available everywhere now, but we've been doing it, well, on the books since 2011. And before that, I had my own sort of structure, but many of the teachers who are teaching in the whole general area, Marysville, even people in other states, but just generally and up to Bellingham, there are teachers who've graduated from our program. And so it's been exponential. We teach teachers, they go on, and so it just goes on. And it's just an amazing program. And it's also an amazing program because if somebody really wants to really learn yoga, not just the poses, not just the breathing, they can enroll in this course. They don't have to become a teacher, but they're going to get that. They're going to be immersed in yoga, and it's a rare opportunity. We only do it once every 2 years, and this time, we're ending our current class will graduate in 2020, April of 2020.
Okay,
that's why I'm hanging around till then.
Got it.
We're gonna finish that course, and then there'll be another one in probably the fall of 2021.
Yeah,
I'm thinking.
Yeah.
So how long are they?
7 months currently.
7 months.
Yeah, it's a 200-hour course, so we kind of stretch it out over a long period of time, and it's basically through the fall, winter, early spring time.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and you know, it's a smaller class. It's not huge, but the people really get a lot out of it.
Yeah. Well, and then do people come? Like, do you guys have people that come from out of state to take the class?
Not for that class because, you know, because it's so stretched out.
Yeah.
We have someone coming from Port Townsend for the current one. So.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do they travel here then for each?
Well, yeah, she fortunately has a place to stay when she comes, because we do it over the weekend, you know, Saturday and Sunday. Yes, it'd be hard for someone who was coming from far away, but
yeah. Well,
you know.
And we had another student in our last training who lives more in the shoreline area in Seattle, but her in-laws have a place up here on Camano, so she could come up and she would stay at their place on the weekend. So I mean,
they have connections.
Yeah, when students got connections up here, she said she just much preferred coming up here instead of battling Seattle and all that traffic. And we were glad to have her.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And this is something that you, Kara, you had started in 2011, and you've been kind of working on it ever since.
Yeah, well, my real history about training teachers is I was so I started my studio in 1998 in Arlington. There were no other yoga teachers around.
Yeah.
And as my schedule grew, I couldn't handle everything myself, so I was like, I got to train my own teachers. So I just opened up a teacher training course to the students that I thought would be the ones that would want it, and they did. And so my original teacher training course was like, I don't know, it was 68 hours or something. It was less time, but equal as intense, very intense. And because I needed the employees, you know, I couldn't stretch it out. So we that's how we got started. So now there's something called the Yoga Alliance, and we are a registered yoga school with the Yoga Alliance, and so we became official, teaching 200-hour courses in 2011.
Okay.
And doing it every 2 years. So every year would be probably a little overload for both of us. It's a big commitment on our part.
It's a lot of time to put into people.
Yes, but worth it. And we do. Our teachers are all trained in-house, and that way the students have consistency. Because you can go to one yoga studio and the teacher will be like, no, do it this way. And then another studio that, no, do it that way. And they come in confused. At our studio, our teaching is, even though we're individuals, it all makes sense from one class to another. Yeah.
Right. And I don't have any experience in yoga, but in like even dancing and stuff like that, even having a relative amount of experience in dance, when you go to a new teacher and you start listening to them count, sometimes they'll count on a different beat and they'll do the moves slightly different, just altered. And it's an art, so they can all change a little bit. Of course. But of course, you're at first you're like, wait, I was taught this way.
Yeah. Right.
And it just kind of throws you off your rhythm for a little while until you can get back up. But that's such a neat, for you, it's such a great legacy that you've left. All of these people that have, grown and learned through what you've taught and now are getting to teach on their own. And that's really neat.
It really is.
Cool.
I just think it's a fantastic program and will continue to be. So, and for people who want to teach or just want to learn, it's great. Yeah,
that's very cool.
So we have the classes, we have the workshops, we have the retreats, we have the teacher training. Did I leave anything out?
Gosh, 24 classes a week.
Yeah, right now 24 classes a week. And also Pilates. Carol has structured the Pilates program, and it's Pilates Fusion. So it's the cool thing about Pilates Fusion is you get to rest at the end, because most Pilates classes there is no rest.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's a lot of good going on, and of course we have all these great introductory rates, and we just always welcome new students. And I'm always going to be selling movement arts because I just can't help it, because I believe in it. And, when you really believe in something, it's easy to promote it because it's a good thing.
Yeah. So, well, we're going to be. I know here at the complex, we're going to really miss seeing you, Kara, around the place, and all the energy that you brought here, and the this whole community that you've built over these last 7 years, and longer, because in Stanwood as well. We actually have people who still come from Arlington to Camano.
Marysville.
Wow. Okay.
Marysville. Yeah.
Not many, but a few.
Yeah. What's do you have what's your longest student of yours?
Close to 20 years. I have. There's a couple who live here on the island. But started in the barn in Arlington.
Oh, very cool.
And they got gradually happier and happier as I moved
closer and closer to Camano.
Closer and closer to home for them. So, it's really been quite a journey, and I never anticipated doing anything for this long. I've always kind of jumped around a little bit, but I guess moving a bunch helped me, have that jumping experience of change. So, change is inevitable. And I just, I think that we're both in a position where we're embracing this change now. And we've done a few things here at the Commons too. We have occasionally have a drum circle, and we've always done that when we feel like the energy is needed. I don't know, there's a vacant space. Let's have a drum circle, to bring up the energy of the whole environment. And that's why we do sound bath, and that's why I play the bowls. We have this this class called Yoga Nidra, and I always play the bowls at the beginning. People go into this deep meditation, and it's just all good stuff. What can I say? It's a crazy world, and we all need some peace, some calmness in our lives, and some tranquility. So we're trying to be the people and the place to provide that for the community.
Yeah. Well, like I said, we appreciate all that you've done and built over these last many years. And wish you really well on your next journey.
Thank you.
I'm sure you'll do very well in that as well.
Yes. And I do plan to visit at some point, but it'll probably be in the summer.
Yeah. If you have the option, yes. All right. Well, I like to end every podcast with some rapid fire questions.
Oh, boy.
They're pretty easy, I think, except for the last one. Okay. So do you have a lesser known or favorite location on Camano Island that you like to hang out?
It's the parks. It's Barnum Point and Cama Beach and kayaking in the bay. And yeah, I mean, we're just surrounded by all these treasures.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I love, there's definitely some spots in those parks that are just, all you hear is the birds. You don't hear traffic anymore, and you just hear the wind, the water, and the birds.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
What about for you, Kara?
Well, I'm thinking of lesser known, because there's lots of favorite places, but lesser known, I have a special relationship with a tree at Otsalati Point Park. It's my old neighborhood, and I just go up there. Now I usually drive there because I'm living out of the neighborhood, but and sit there and just take it all in. The view, the eagles, there's a heavy eagle hangout there, and
Yeah.
if people have gone up there, usually if you remember to look up, you'll probably see eagles. And yeah, so that's my place.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Pretend you have a friend coming from out of town who hasn't been to Camano before. What would their first day look like here?
We're talking the summer, because that's when friends come up to Camano. Yeah. Well, yeah, I love to take friends, if I've got a friend with a kayak, I love to go out on the bay, go out at Salati Point, or even in Port Susan, just get out on the water. Yeah. And you can see the herons and see the eagles, and
Yeah.
and take them here for coffee.
Yeah. I always like to take people, hopefully, so during the summer for sure, down to the Cama Beach Cafe for breakfast.
Yeah.
Then go for a walk, and that can take from a short time to a long time. You can walk all the way through to the state park, and it's nice if you have a dog with you, but I don't have a dog right now. I'm trying to resist.
Before you move?
Yeah, no, I have to wait. So yeah, and then if later on the day, every time I have friends who come here, they always want crab.
Yeah.
We're still kind of wondering why there's no restaurant on Camano Island that serves up crab.
Right.
Or seafood in general in Stanwood.
Yeah, I mean, now Taft has a crab cake salad. Now that's kind of nice.
Start.
They're starting, but it's just because they're always, and then if it's not the season, oh no, you can't get the crab. So anyway, and then time at the beach too. Yeah. Well, you can get that down at Cama at the state park. You can get it all: the forest and the beach, and the eagles and the herons and just
the whales,
the beauty, the fresh air. It's just stunning.
Yeah. No, and I think the neat thing on Camano is you can still find those places like you were talking about at Barnum Point or Cama Beach, or just these different places where you can just go and sit by the water, and you won't necessarily see people. You can just listen to the waves and just relax. You don't have to hear cars I don't know. It's one of those things that, like, as you get busier in life, you start doing things. You go visit cities, or there's not that many places that you can just do that. That you're around, and the fact that we're on this island that there's a multitude of those places to go visit and just breathe.
Well, when my husband and I first moved up here, we were coming from South Everett, where we would hear sirens every night. And we moved, it's like both of us could just feel this kind of let down of stress and tension just crossing the bridge onto the island.
Yeah.
And it was noticeable when we first moved up here, because as soon as you get back out on I-5, there go the shoulders up to the ears, and you're just hanging onto your steering wheel and holding on. But it just this decompress
right
sense of coming onto the island.
Yeah. All right. Who is an interesting or fascinating person in this community that I should interview next?
Oh, gosh. You've already interviewed Levon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Have you interviewed Mary Pilkington?
No, but I actually just spoke with her. I got her contact info.
Yeah.
And she's on the list to be interviewed. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
I've heard my parents were talking about her.
Yeah.
And they've had conversations with her and just were like, you need to have her
Yep.
on the podcast. So I'm very excited to have her on.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, that would probably be the person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. And if you think of anyone else, you can always email me.
Sure.
Okay, lastly, if you could have a message on a billboard on Camano Island right as you're driving on the island, what would it say? Told you, the last one's the hard question.
So people coming onto the island, like a promotional kind of thing, or like
Yeah.
anything?
Yeah, just what you think people should hear driving onto the island.
Well, I like the statement, activate your bliss. Activate your bliss.
Or be the peace that you seek.
Yeah. Perfect. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thanks, Brandon. It was
Thanks
fun.
a lot, Brandon. It's been really fun.
All right.
Yeah.
And Islanders, I will talk to you on the next one. Well, a big thank you to Kara Keating and Carol Mason for joining me on the podcast today. And we wish Kara well in her new adventures, and we're glad to have Carol around for the future. If you haven't already, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform. It helps us to be found by other Islanders like yourself. And for more information on this episode or previous episodes, go to CamanoCommons.com/podcast. That's CamanoCommons.com/podcast. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.